Hey, happy Thursday, everybody. Thank you for joining today. We are so excited to talk about the past, present, and future of zoos and if they are needed or not anymore. As we were just actually looking at this opening right here, is it time to shut down the zoos? This is from The Guardian in the UK. Now, zoos, everybody thinks about zoos as a local thing, but we have to remember they are an international problem. They are somewhat of a worldwide plague. So the best way to understand how to combat this plague is to think about the past and figure out how things are working out right now. So thank you everybody for joining us today. It's great to be able to have everybody there. Hey, Stacy, thank you for being here with us today. It's great to see you here. We're so excited. And again, we want to remind everybody, May 28th, Harambe Day. Harambe Day can be celebrated anywhere. And before we end the show today, we're going to talk a little bit about how you can participate in Harambe Day no matter where you are in the world, because no matter where you are, our voice still counts. Jeff Kremer said yesterday something very beautiful about the fact that here we are in this amazing time where we can all communicate together. And Sierra and I always talk about the fact that we live in this golden opportunity in the timeline of history where things are reaching a critical mass for the animals. We have the ability to have some of the most impact out of all the generations of the past right now, because right now what we do matters. And what people did 1,000 ago matters, but maybe not as poignantly as it does right now. Every move counts. Hey, Maxwell, thanks for joining today. It's really nice to see you here with us. It's great to see. I love seeing all these names pop back up and see all of our friends here, because this is what it is. This is a sort of a group for all of us to get to talk about these topics that are on our mind, especially if we don't have a lot of other friends to talk to them about, or if our other friends get tired of hearing us rant about it all the time and go, yeah, then, here we are. So we have our friends. Here we go. Anyway, let's talk about the zoos. Now, before we start, I want to begin with the idea that we have been seeing in the news over and over and over that zoos are closing due to lack of attendance and rise of costs. Now, this is an incredible change, pivotal change in our history. So let's talk about it a little bit. What is the zoo? Why do we have zoos? What's this concept? Zoos are, okay, there is a zoo and there was what was called a menagerie. And the menageries were very old versions of zoos. They started way back in ancient Egypt, all the way to the collapse of the Roman Empire. Emperors would hold exotic animals as captive to show off to other people and say, look at my wealth, look at my power, look how amazing I am. I have this thing that you can't get around here, and I'm sure that the first pharaoh that saw, a gorilla was like, what? So it had its power back in the day to astonish, because people just did not have a lot of information, extremely uneducated time in our history, although they thought they were there. The Romans really thought they had pushed everything forward, but the relationship to animals never advanced, unfortunately, that much. Now, that started way back in the day in ancient Egypt. Now, the first zoo, as we would kind of call it, was in England, and it was in 1110. It was Henry I, I believe, in Oxfordshire. I think I just said that terribly wrong. If I did, please correct me. Let me know. Oxfordshire. Okay. let me know. I'm curious. Please tell me how to say it, because I'm going to England next month and I need to know. Anyway, the zoo was started there back by Henry I in 1110. It was another menagerie. Now, menagerie was, again, a private zoo run by an emperor, a leader of some sort, or extremely wealthy person. Eventually, that was abolished. And what happened was all those animals were moved into London, into the same structures now that are the London Zoo. It was called the London Zoological. Oh, no, I'm sorry. They were moved to the London Tower first, then to a new structure that was called the London Zoo. So that's an interesting little history of zoos and their origin within society. And this is why we have such a complicated task ahead of us, because we have to deprogram our cultures from misinformation that's been passed on through generations. So this is how far we have to go back. This is how much misinformation we have. We have to go back all the way to 1110 when the first concept was. So now, as we talk about it, the good thing is we are seeing a big change right now. So we're going to do another show later on about the finances of zoos, but a lot of zoos are closing their doors in order to due to the fact that they just can't afford it anymore. One of the most recent ones was a Sierra Nevada Zoological Park, which is it appears to be more like a roadside zoo. We actually just found out it's in the I think the War of the Planet of the Apes, the newer one, and it's one of the zoos where one of the characters escapes from. But this zoo closed down to one of the things that many places are facing, and that is a decline in attendance due to a new consciousness that's sweeping over the younger generations. They're looking, they're seeing like what our poster is trying to indicate. And although when you go to the zoo, you're not going to see a gorilla behind a cage like this unless it's in a night house behind the scenes, which is where they live. They live in cages unless they are on display. And remember, they are only on display for a couple hours a day because there are multiple troops that are rotated. So this is pretty much the life of a captive gorilla, although we think they're in these nice enclosures. But that's a whole other episode. We're going to talk all about that. But what's really important is zoos' money is tied to attendance. They have all these fundraisers and things, but that is to pay these exorbitant salaries for, people like Thane Maynard of the Cincinnati Zoo, who runs it. He makes a lot of money, and they need to keep money coming in. And now attendance is tied to consciousness. So parents want to teach their kids about animals for the betterment, and that's where zoos begin. And they prey upon that need. And they say, come on in, this is a great educational place. As you've seen in the movie, it's not necessarily the educational place it is sold as to us. So what we need to do is start to educate, and an educated consumer is the best weapon to change for the future. And we have to remember that. And one great example of this is, I'm sure, a movie that everybody remembers, which is Blackfish. Now, Blackfish came on the scene around 2013 or so, and Blackfish was such a huge sensation that it almost shut the doors to SeaWorld forever. They actually, it was 2013. Their stock went down 33% after the documentary's release. This is the power of a documentary. This is the power of people saying, we don't think that this cruelty is acceptable form of entertainment. And where, we had gladiators a couple thousand years ago, we don't accept that as entertainment now. We should no longer accept the violence and exploitation of animals either, because they are sentient and they are our living relatives. And we have a lot more knowledge now that we need to make new decisions based on this new knowledge. So the company's attendance at SeaWorld, it declined heavily. They lost 17% of their attendance right away, and another 14% in revenue the next year as well. So it steadily declined, and they actually reported an 84% drop in profits overall in 2014. And that was the power of education. People chose not to go. That's the only power we have. And if you can educate yourself or your friends about the zoo and get less people to go, we will get their attention and they can make changes. And we'll talk about a little bit more about that before we end as well. So, by the way, SeaWorld, how the SeaWorld saga ends is SeaWorld kept denying that the movie was legitimate, and they kept denying that there was any problem at all, which means they had actually defrauded their investors, and they ended up having to pay their investors because they misled them. They paid a $5 million fine for telling the investors everything was fine, even though they were losing a bunch of attendance based on the movie. Now, this is so important because we're starting to see, like the Sierra Nevada Zoo we were just talking about, and a really great thing is Costa Rica. And again, zoos are international problems. Costa Rica has done away with all public zoos. They had 2 left. They are gone now. And it's very interesting. I wanted to quote really quick the Minister of Environmentalism that closed the public zoos down. He said this, quote, "Captivity is only justified when animals cannot return to the forest for either physical or behavioral problems that prevent them from living in freedom." So, that is also maybe a questionable thing. Maybe some people think captivity is never good. Maybe some people, what he's saying is, We need to go to a sanctuary model and walk away from a zoo model. We need to help animals, not exploit them. And that is a huge step. Costa Rica is always ahead of the curve anyway. I mean, they have a rule where over 30% of their country is set aside for preservation, land preservation. So they are ecologically one of the leaders that we have in the world to look towards. And this is an amazing thing. Now, unfortunately, money still talks, and there are over 18 private zoos that will remain open in Costa Rica. So it's not a solution, it's not a final, but it is a step towards where we want to go. And that just shows that zoos are listening to people, governments are listening to people. As a matter of fact, I wanted to share with everybody really quickly. Let's see. I wanted to share with everybody, there was a study done recently, and Sierra found this and actually posted this up yesterday, but there's been this recent study about the role of zoos and aquariums in a changing world. Now, this was done last year. And as we read through it, it's very pro-zoo. It establishes that the zoos are, this really important institution, and that is the perspective of this particular paper. But through it all, the conclusion of the paper does say the future of modern zoos and aquariums will rely on their capacity to meet ongoing and ever-growing social and environmental expectations. Their plans should consider chiefly conservation priorities, which will inevitably be accompanied by education and research. Throughout this process, a profound change is necessary for many of these institutions. Some may disappear, others will have to adapt. And finally, a significant number of zoos will continue down the path they have already started. In this way, zoos may become an essential tool to meet the urgent needs of the biodiversity status demands. Now, notice everything that the zoo says they are, this paper says zoos should become. So just the very first point here to make. This paper shows us that what the zoos say they're doing, they are not doing. They're not doing conservation priorities. They are not filling the holes that the world needs. They are held for captive entertainment purposes. So that was one thing about the paper that I thought was fascinating. The other thing I thought was really fascinating is that just like SeaWorld, the zoos have to listen to the audience. Now, this is where Harambe Day comes back in. Harambe Day is a really important day because we can remember that we have a vote. We have a say. You can just simply not buy a ticket. If there was a strike against zoos on one day of the year, hopefully Harambe Day, where we can encourage all of our friends and family to not buy tickets that day. Just don't go to the zoo day. That's what we should be calling it. Don't go to the zoo day. Because if we can show them that we want change, they will listen. And this is hope for us, because zoos, as problematic as they are, we fight against their need. We don't feel that there's a need per se. I mean, that's my personal perspective. I don't feel that zoos have a place anymore. The things they offer can be done through an NGO or a vet clinic. I mean, there's no reason to have this archaic thing going on. So that's my perspective. So the question is, can zoos adapt to people like me and people like you that say, we want to see animals treated properly and we want to see you helping them. We thought you were helping them. You're not helping them. We talk more about that in the movie as well. And if you haven't seen the movie, please check it out. It's on Tubi. It's free. You can also help support us. And remember, all of purchases made to Harambe movie, portion of that does go to the gorilla organization, which is doing boots on the ground work to save gorillas in their habitat. So that's the other side of it, right? You've got captivity as an argument, but then you've got freedom as the other concept that often gets left out of that argument. We need to focus more on the freedom for these gorillas and less about how to manage captivity better. That's the difference between animal rights and animal welfare. And we ask everybody to take a look at Harambe's story and at sentient gorillas, all sentient beings, through the concept of animal rights versus animal welfare. Instead of managing how poorly they are treated and having to upkeep that and create an entire industry around, is everyone following the rules? Maybe they should just have rights and not be exploited. And then nobody has to check if they're being properly exploited or not. Still doesn't quite make sense to me, the animal welfare concept, because they're still being exploited. It's like a factory farm. You may make a little bit more space for the battery hens, but they doesn't change their experience. It just makes the consumer feel a little bit better. It's a small pillow for your conscience. And we don't need pillows for our conscience anymore so we can go to bed and forget about what happened that day. We need actual change so that our children and our grandchildren have a future and have the same world that we do, a better world that we do. We want them to have the animals that we're losing at a rapid rate. We want them to have the environment we're losing at a rapid rate. And we want them to have the health and access to health that is disappearing at a rapid rate. It all comes into play. Remember, gorillas are not supposed to be exhibits. They are supposed to be in the forests. Animal rights again. They're supposed to be in the forest doing their job, as Ian Redmond reminds us, of gardeners of the forest. They need to be out there eating what they eat, going to the bathroom where they go to the bathroom, sleeping where they sleep, just literally doing what they do. They change the world. They're like green machines. They bring our world and they elevate us up a notch just by existing. And we need to give them the respect for that. And that's what Harambe Day is about, is speaking up and saying, no more of this, end these breeding programs now. We don't need any more breeding programs. We don't need any more Western lowland gorillas in captivity. It's ridiculous. We don't need it. We don't need husbandry of gorillas. We don't need management of it, because none of those gorillas over here on this side of me in the animal welfare world of zoos and exhibit and captivity exhibitions, none of those gorillas make it back to the wild where they need to be doing their job. This is the empty spot behind me. That's the wild where the gorillas should be, and they are missing. So until we can get them there, we're in danger of our world collapsing, because we're not going to have any trees if we don't have any gardeners in the forest, if we don't have any animals regenerating essential life systems for us. It's the end of all of us. We can look at pollution, but we also have to look at holistic solution, the animals themselves. So this is what Harambe Day is all about. Now, May 28th, we're asking everybody to please, if you can, get a couple friends together, go to your local zoo, write a message telling them you don't want captivity anymore. Captivity is no longer an acceptable form of entertainment. Cruelty is not cute. We have a lot of different sayings. If you're interested in hosting a protest, give us a contact. Reach out to us on our Facebook page, or if you know us personally, reach out to us. Let us know. We'll talk to you. We'll give you all the information. We even have some artwork. We have a couple different ideas. We have rules and information that you can get about how to set up a peaceful, positive protest. And that's the thing. We're not necessarily there to confront or to yell at people. We're there to educate, because education is the key to change. And we've seen that throughout our entire history. And again, come back to zoos. Private collection in the ancient the ancient Egyptian time to now, keeping animals, breeding animals to keep them enslaved for exhibition, for selling tickets, is a cruelty from thousands of years ago that I think we've learned enough to bypass. Again, Harambe Day will be that day. If you can't go to your local zoo, we're asking everybody to hold up a sign or hold up a candle as a candlelight vigil, an online candlelight vigil for Harambe and for all the sentient beings that are stuck inside of captivity right now, wondering why they're there. Let's let them know that we care. Let's let the zoos know that we care. Let's let each other know that we care, because our voice is really powerful. And the zoo industry and a lot of other industries will try to isolate us all, tell us we're crazy, and not let us find each other. Let's all find each other. Okay, we're one family. Let's find each other and let's fight for the change, for the future. Let's fight for these animals. Let's fight for the stopping of this exploitation for profit. So we're excited for everybody to join us on May 28th. And let's see, Stacy Saddlefield says that the point people are missing when they go to a zoo is they are not seeing the animal in their natural environment. Absolutely. And how they behave in their natural environment. So where is the educational value? It doesn't exist. Agree 100%, Stacy. And it's interesting point that we bring up in the movie. Will Travers from Born Free talks about that as well, that the education that is given is minuscule at best. It is a map with a red dot telling you where it comes from and what it eats. And that's about it. And again, we want to bring up the point that Born Free says that they did a recent study showing that people spend less than a minute in front of an exhibit. So how much are people learning? And another thing I would ask about the history of zoos and the modern future of zoos is this. If zoos are so critical to save animals, then why have we had zoos for over 100 years and we still have animals disappearing all the time, the animals that are also in the zoos? It is not the educational tool to make people care about conservation that they try to sell it as. And Maxwell, thank you. Harambe's birthday as well, May 27th. We have to remember, in the midst of all the sadness and the remembrance of Harambe and his passing on the 28th, that his birthday is the celebration we should be thinking about. Now, we're having a very special celebration. Our own Harambe Movies, Nicole Slater, who has been working with us since the very beginning, shares a birthday with Harambe. So we'll have her tell the story on Harambe Day, but it is very special to her, and Harambe holds a very special place in her life. And Harambe seeing him changed her life, but his death profoundly impacted and changed what that change meant inside of her life. And it's an amazing story, and we can't wait to share it with everybody. And we'll be celebrating Harambe's birthday and Nicole's birthday on May 28th. And we're going to be having a little bit of an online celebration too. So everybody, please make sure to wish Nicole a happy birthday on May 27th, as well as Harambe. So remember, we want to call attention to life, and we want change through love, compassion, kindness, and a new type of future, because the old road of violence, exploitation, finances, and all that stuff has led to this version of gorillas, and they're missing in the wild, and we need to get them back there. So thank you all for taking the time to be with us today. Thank you guys for watching the movie. Thank you for always being so supportive of these very, very important topics, because these important topics can change the world as we know them. And just as we're saying goodbye, I wanted to share with everybody, this is a list of zoos that have closed. And so your local zoo will say, impossible, it can't happen. We are the bedrock of your town, and zoos can come and go. They are not important. They don't matter. They don't help anything. And they're just outdated. Now look at all these. There's the Gatwick Zoo, Glasgow Zoo, Griffith Park Zoo, that I shamefully admit went to when I first moved to Los Angeles. Hacienda Nápoles, that's the zoo with Pablo Escobar, where he brought in the hippos. That's turned into a whole invasive species problem. None of these have helped animals, the towns, conservation, the prosperity of the future, the prosperity of animals, the consciousness of the consumers. None of this stuff. SeaWorld Ohio, goodbye, good riddance. Okay, so these are all the zoos. Tel Aviv. You see, there's some massive cities that have tried this, and it's just not going to work, luckily. So why don't we get rid of them all now? There's nothing left we need in them. So thanks again, everybody, for joining. Can't wait to catch up with you. We have some very exciting announcements coming up. We're going to be doing lives every day, talking about a variety of topics that include zoo-related topics, animal rights-related topics, and the future. What is the future for captive animals? So I hope you guys have a great day. Looking forward to seeing more comments. Let me know what your thoughts are. Do you think zoos have a place in the future? And do you think that zoo will be able to, those zoos will be able to, how will they look? If we do have zoos, what are they going to look like? I would love to hear your thoughts, see your comments. And before we go, Stacy says, Catskill Game Farm. My parents used to take as a child, and I loved it. But of course, there wasn't the type of awareness back in the 60s and 70s there is today. Exactly. And that's the thing, like people smoked in the 50s. People learned about it in the 80s. And now we have a very different society. So our society is amazing at taking in new information and adapting, changing, growing. And that's what everything needs to happen here. Hey, Jody, thanks for joining us today. And thank you as well, because all of us here are warriors for the animals. We're just all part of one giant family trying to stand up and make a big difference and try to fight for the animals. So great to see everybody here today. You guys have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow and talk a little bit more about how we can